Hello everyone, it is that time of year again. It is time to announce Victober 2022. Welcome everyone, and welcome for the first time if you are new here. If you are wondering what is Victober, it is an abbreviation of Victorian October, where myself and several other lovely hosts celebrate all things Victorian literature. And I cannot wait to tell you all about the prompts. We do have some changes with the hosts, and I will tell you about that first. So unfortunately, Lucy is not able to join us this year. Hopefully next year and in the future, Lucy will be able to join us again. So the other host and the creator of Victober is Katie over on Books and Things. And I am forever grateful to Katie for coming up with such a splendid readathon that just makes October such a delicious time of year. When it was already special, Victorian literature just seems to fit so well during the month of October. And I am looking forward to telling you about the new hosts that we have. We have 3 new hosts, and we just thought with only 2 of us, we should add in some new creativity, and I think you will really enjoy the 3 new hosts that we have. So the first new host is Roz from Scally-Dandling About the Books. Roz reads so incredibly widely, a lot of literary fiction and a lot of classics in there. And I think you're going to really enjoy getting recommendations for Roz's prompt, which I will tell you about in a moment, and just enjoy her lovely content that feels very conversational. The next is Petra at the channel Petra U. If you are searching for cozy reading blogs, look no further than Petra's channel. I really delight in the coziness and the casual feel of her videos, and she just has a wonderful aesthetic to her channel, and I have already very much enjoyed her Victober videos during past Victobers, and I am really excited to have Petra as a co-host this year. And then last but certainly not least is Marissa from the channel Blatantly Bookish. Marissa puts out just very thoughtful content. She really thinks about her take on the books that she reads, the observations that she's made, and connections to other literature that she reads, and is a very analytical and thoughtful reader. So I'm so pleased to have these 3 wonderful hosts to add, and I think you're going to really enjoy the prompts. And I'm here to tell you about the prompts for the 7th Victober, which is so exciting that this is the 7th year. So if this is your first year, welcome. All you have to do to participate in Victober is read 1 piece of Victorian literature. It can be a novel, it can be a short story, a novella, a play, a poem, an essay. It does not have to be anything big. Just to dip your toes into Victorian literature if you are new, or to branch out if there's maybe some parts of Victorian literature that you haven't gotten to yet, like myself, and you would like to explore more. So I am looking forward to Victobering with everyone this year. And now for the group read, which is The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. I have somewhat of a complicated relationship with Thomas Hardy, so I do go into this with a bit of trepidation, but it won by a mile on Goodreads. And so it is the winner, and we will be reading 2 chapters a day. That is the schedule for it. And I will make sure to link down below. There is a Victober Goodreads group where people can discuss to their heart's content The Mayor of Casterbridge. So yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing what other people think of this book, and maybe diving in. It will be just the right time for me to come to it. We'll see what I think this time around of The Mayor of Casterbridge, which I did enjoy, but I am just, like I said, I have a complicated relationship with Thomas Hardy. We shall see how it goes. On to the prompts. My prompt is to read a Victorian work with chronic illness or disability representation. If you are new to my channel or if you have not heard me speak about it, I have a chronic illness myself, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or it's called POTS for short. And it has very dramatically changed my entire life. It will be, 4 years now that I've had this chronic illness. And your life, it's not just a little bit different. Just everything changes whenever you're thinking about doing any mundane task in your life. You have to kind of account for, you have to budget the energy that you have. And also the big things. There are some things that I'm just not able to do now. So it has dramatically changed everything for me. And it's a lot to live day in, day out with chronic illness. And the Victorian era is a very interesting time regarding chronic illness representation in literature, because there is a fair amount, as opposed to contemporary books that come out now. It's very exceptional if chronic illness is represented. And then, of course, there is a fair amount of disability representation. And so I think the definition for chronic illness I've heard is a kind of perpetual illness for more than 3 months at a time. And so I thought it would be kind of an interesting challenge to have. And I will give you those recommendations in a moment after I go through the rest of the prompts. Then Katie from Books and Things, her prompt is to read a Victorian Bildungsroman or coming of age story. There are many, many options from the Victorian era for this. And Katie, over on her announcement video, which will be linked down below, will have some wonderful recommendations for you in that category. And the next prompt is Marissa's, and that is to read a Victorian short story. What I really enjoy about this prompt is there are many collections of Victorian short stories out there to kind of maybe find an author you didn't know about before. And on the flip side, maybe you have a favorite author, but you haven't read much of their shorter fiction. And I think this could be a really great way to kind of expand your reading in a fun way that's, doesn't feel daunting because it would be a short story. And Marissa will have some recommendations for that on her announcement video. And then we get to Petra's challenge, which is really fun and festive. And it is to read a Victorian work and watch an adaptation of it. There are a heck of a lot of good adaptations of Victorian novels. And so Petra will have some recommendations for you on her announcement video. And then last but not least is Roz's challenge to read a work of Victorian poetry, long or short. I think this is a really excellent challenge. I think we aren't heaping just, piles of books on you with these challenges. And this could be a way to become really acquainted with a poem or a poetry collection. And Roz will have some wonderful recommendations for you. And then 2 things before I get into my recommendations. One is that the challenges are completely, totally, utterly optional. If these overwhelm you, don't do the challenges. You do not have to do the challenges. These are, purely for extra fun. They are not a requirement in the least. And then secondly, I do get now kind of the last 2 Victobers, I've gotten messages or comments, why don't we include French 19th century literature, German, Russian, Italian, and it's pure and simple. It's celebrating Victorian literature. So in the reign of Queen Victoria, so in the UK. And, people don't have to feel like they can't read that kind of literature other times in the year. And if you want to use this as a springboard for it, go right ahead. But I get questions kind of like, why isn't it like that? And I think someone then could just start a 19th century readathon if they're so inclined. So yes, we're celebrating specifically Victorian literature. And but by all means, don't let that stop you from reading the other things. So I'm going to now give recommendations for my prompt of reading a book with chronic illness or disability representation. Now, firstly, I want to pull out Charlotte Mary Yonge, The Heir of Redcliff. This is such a wonderful domestic book, and I think for people who really enjoy Louisa May Alcott, this is a bit more kind of like on the saccharine side. But if you like, I would say instead of saccharine, to me, it feels sentimental. So if you like very sentimental and warm novels, I think The Heir of Redcliff would definitely be worth a try. And I would also love to piggyback one that has a very similar feel to it, and that is Heartsease, which physical copies are hard to get a hold of, but Project Gutenberg offers many Victorian ebooks for free. And so that's how I read Heartsease, and I really liked Heartsease. I maybe liked it as much as the Heir of Redcliff. Now, I have also read The Daisy Chain, and I felt that had kind of a more didactic feel in the chapters. But if you are a diehard, like you really enjoyed The Heir of Redcliff, I'd say The Daisy Chain is definitely worth your time, and it has some really fun, deeper elements in there. And I should say, these are just domestic realism novels where kind of the personal growth of the characters is a really big aspect of the plot. There's some really moving scenes, particularly in the Heir of Redcliff. And the basic plot for the Heir of Redcliff is there is a family that has kind of this black cloud hanging over their family legacy. And the heir to that and how he deals with kind of his identity being a part of this family that has a tarnished name, and how he doesn't let that determine what he will be like. So yes, it is interesting. So far in every Charlotte Mary Yonge that I've read, there is disability or chronic illness representation. And also the clever woman of the family. And this is one of hers that I can't decide whether I like it or not. The premise is so interesting because it is set at a seaside town somewhere in Dorset, in a fictional town. And it's primarily women that make up kind of the main characters. There are a few men in here, but they are vastly outnumbered. And so if this is kind of the new woman novel. And so I go back and forth on what I think of this. But I think for people who are particularly interested in novels that really delve into kind of gender roles in Victorian literature, this could really interest you. And then I have not had success with Dinah Mullock Craik's books, but I do know that also I have read Olive, and I know that John Halifax, A Gentleman, both have disability or chronic illness representation in them. And so I think you could try out a sample of her writing and see if maybe you would get on with it more than I would. I know that Katie from Books and Things really loves Olive by Dinah Mullock Craik. So I think it's worth a try for many people who enjoy Victorian literature. And then, of course, I'm going to include some Elizabeth Gaskell in here. And this one is I'm first going to recommend is Cranford. So if you're fine with low-key domestic kind of mundane comings and goings, but written about in a very charming style. And this was not intended as a novel when she first started writing. So it definitely doesn't have this big wow kind of factor to it, but it's a quieter book. And there's something about it that I really, really love. Towards the end, it does feel a bit more plot-ish. So yes, and Elizabeth Gaskell is, tied for my favorite Victorian author with George Eliot. So definitely wanted to recommend the books by her that feature chronic illness and or disability representation. Then Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This is so well crafted. It's such a masterpiece. And if you want kind of many, many moving parts within one story, Bleak House is a really great one to read. And there is a big legal case that many people have pinned their hopes and dreams on it going their way. So that's an interesting aspect of the plot. And I think Esther, one of the leading ladies, is just a fabulous character. And then I have to recommend some George Eliot. And I want to recommend, it's lower in my stack, but I want to just grab. Okay. First of all, I will touch on The Mill on the Floss, which does have disability representation in here. And I think it is a really interesting piece of the book because you see how the main characters of Maggie and Tom view how this affects the character that has said disability. And it's really interesting to see the difference in Tom and Maggie's personalities. I don't love this book as far as George Eliot goes, but it is George Eliot, so I think it's definitely worth your time. And I know others who like George Eliot who this is one of their favorites. But the two George Eliot that I love wholeheartedly, the first is Daniel Jaronda. And I think despite the length, this is a really approachable work. And the main character of Daniel, and then the other, she's basically a main character too. Some say this book should be named after her, Gwendolyn Harleth, but I think it's suitable. I think it fits this, that it's named after Daniel. They are both young adults, and they're trying to figure out what they want out of life, how they're going to go about it, and the lengths that they're willing to go to for that. But there is chronic illness representation in Daniel Jaronda. And then in Middlemarch, for those who have read and loved Middlemarch, the chronic illness representation is with Mary Garth. Many, including myself, love the character of Mary Garth, the man who she is kind of a companion to. is chronically ill throughout much of the book. And Mary is so caring and kind to him. And this is such a masterpiece. This is one that will stick with you so long. I really think it's worth all of the work, and I love it, love it, love it. And I already can't wait to reread it. I just read it last year, and I already am so looking forward to another reread of it. Okay, then the life of Charlotte Bronte. So this might seem unusual, but Charlotte Bronte did have fairly poor health on and off throughout her adult years. And so I think the life of Charlotte Bronte, there's going to be some talk, I think, of that in Gaskell's work about her. I'm very sensitive about this book. I feel like people come down really hard on Elizabeth Gaskell, and she was just writing in a very typical style, during that time period about Charlotte Bronte. So don't take everything as gospel truth in this. Take it with a grain of salt. But I think that the fact that Charlotte Bronte's father and husband approved this after it was written, like, people should not be so hard on Elizabeth Gaskell. That's what I think. Then Kilvert's diary. This is a real diary. It's a work of nonfiction. And the author, Frances Kilvert, just on and off struggled with different chronic health issues. And he writes about that in here bit to bit, and kind of the struggle to have a livelihood when you're fighting an uphill battle just to do the daily tasks of life. And it's a really charming work, and he just has such a love for the landscape and the people that he's serving in his parish. He is a curate, and I just think it's a really lovely, lovely work. And then, now, this does have chronic illness representation. Is it good? No. So just go in knowing that. Is it a fascinating story that will keep you on the edge of your seat? Yes. So, The Law and the Lady by Wilkie Collins. It is not good representation. Just say that. Do not hold it against me. When you are shocked and dismayed by Wilkie Collins' ideas of disability. But it is in there, and it can be an interesting thing to read and then take a step back and think about, wow, what does this say about the Victorians' views of disability? This basically is about a couple that they get married, and soon after they get married, the wife knows that the husband has a secret. And he's like, you really don't want to know it. You're going to be really upset when you find out. But she takes it upon herself to find out, and then she wants to know more after she finds out. She has to know more. So it is really, really compelling reading. And I think I read it in 3 days, the first time that I read it. And then, speaking of Wilkie Collins, let's continue on. The Woman in White. This does not feel long. If you like the writing, read 2 chapters. And if you like the writing, this will fly by. It is just brimming over with atmosphere, and the pacing and the tension building is spot on. This, to me, is so preferable to a modern day thriller where I feel like I have whiplash by the end. I love the sustained tension building in this, and I love the exhale that comes at the end. It is a masterpiece. And then another one that I love from Wilkie Collins is The Moonstone. And what's really fun about this, and also in The Woman in White, is there's multiple narrators. There is humor in this, and I love getting to see the personalities of the different narrators. They very much come through as you're reading this. And it's a mystery. It starts out where there is this moonstone that was stolen from India. And it is gifted to Rachel Verinder on her 16th birthday. And then the next day after her birthday, it is gone. It's missing. Rachel does not know where it is. And it's just an amazing plot. Kicks off from there. This also is full of good atmosphere. And then an Anthony Trollope to recommend. He actually didn't have, that I could think of, much chronic illness representation. And the lovely ladies in the Voxer group, we were chatting, the other hosts, and they reminded me that there is chronic illness in Barchester Towers. So I think that many people, if you start off the Barchester series with the warden, it's very low-key. And the plot is a curate realizes he is making more money than is written in his contract, and his inner turmoil and agony about that. And so it's very, very low-key. But I think once you get to Barchester Towers, then this is very plot heavy. And so there's a lot that actually goes on in it, and it's very well worth a read. Another Dickens to recommend, and that is Our Mutual Friend. This is just pristine in its crafting. Bella Wilfer is one of my favorite characters ever. again, with so many intertwining plots, and they all come together beautifully at the end. This is one I did a disservice to when I read. I read it in a week, and I wish I had really savored it over a longer period of time. So, Our Mutual Friend. I will come back to you at some point, Our Mutual Friend. Interestingly, I just saw on the back cover that George Orwell has blurbed it. This is so interesting. And he says, this book is perhaps the surest mark of Dickens' genius. The monstrosities that he created are still remembered as monstrosities in spite of getting mixed up in would-be probable melodramas. So interesting. And then another Dickens is David Copperfield. This is definitely one of my favoritist Dickens. It's written in first person, so you feel like you're sitting down with a cup of tea and David is telling you the story of his life. And it's just such a lovely, beautiful book full of warmth, and I love it. So many wonderful side characters. Then Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. I would be really interesting for others that read this to kind of know what you think of the disability representation in this. I think people have kind of mixed reactions for what they think. Now, also going in, just know I do not love this for the romances. They can actually be very frustrating. But the characters of Hester and Margaret, right? Yes, Hester and Margaret, they are the reason that I love this book. I love these characters. So I definitely want to read Deerbrook some point soon in the future. I'm craving it. Then Great Expectations. You have two representations, a very iconic one in the character of Miss Havisham. And I don't know, sometimes the lines can be blurred between disability and chronic illness. What do we make of Miss Havisham? She is such a fascinating character. Yes, I hope that maybe someone would pick this up. And this is a shorter Dickens, so it's really, really just blew my mind the first time I read it, and I would love to reread it. And then one of my absolute positively favorite Victorian novels, and that is Jane Eyre. This is another one that's written in first person. Jane is telling you the story of her life, and she is such an amazing character to follow. She always stays true to herself and is full of inner strength. And she has a quiet strength about her. She's a bit of an Anne Elliot at times. And yes, I just love Jane Eyre. And then Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. There's a couple representations of chronic illness in this, but the one that I'm thinking of is a character for much of the book. He's a character that it's not for lack of desire that he's unable to do what he wants. Sometimes you have all of these goals and dreams and visions, but your physical limitations hold you back from that, and how frustrating and heartbreaking that can be. So I'm just finishing up my yearly reread of Wives and Daughters, and my heart is breaking for that character as I'm reading. And then lastly, North and South. This is a really heartbreaking book, so you have to go in with the tissues ready. It's this wonderful, beautiful mixture of social commentary, romance, mystery, domestic realism, and culture shock all rolled into one. And it's just got a killer love story. And yes, it's just beautiful and told so well. Many people, this is their favorite Elizabeth Gaskell, and I can definitely see why. I cannot believe this is the end of the Victober 2022 announcement video. I am so looking forward to chatting with you in the comments. I am so looking forward to all the fun we are going to have together and the books that we will read. And I'm going to, of course, be putting up some Victober content, and I cannot wait to see all the videos from the other hosts and the content from other people participating. And also, the hashtag is very active on Instagram. I'm really active on Instagram, a little too active during October, and then I have to take a break in November. So yes, thank you as always for watching, and I cannot wait for the most wonderful time of year starting on October 1st. Bye.